Oh my goodness, I about started to break a sweat trying to get that thumbnail, so I hope you guys appreciated it. Hey beauty babes, welcome to my channel. I'm Maria, aka Agape Love Girl. Thank you so much for joining me today. Today I'm going to be doing a ranking video. I've been wanting to do another video ranking my recent palettes. The last one I did was a couple months ago and I didn't realize it was that far back, but I was like, oh, maybe I'll just rank all the palettes I've tried since then. I thought maybe it'd be like 10, 15 palettes, but no, it was actually 20 palettes, which I think that kind of works out so it's like a perfectly even number, 20 palettes, but that's a lot of palettes. And this was actually really hard. Some of them were a little bit easier than others to choose and rank, but with 20 palettes, it was really tough. So I just wanted to let you guys know that there are some palettes, especially towards the very bottom of the ranking, that the ranking really is based on more so the quality and my disappointment in them. But beyond a certain point, which I'm sure I will let you guys know, I think that the quality is good and a lot of these palettes could have been ranked higher. But when you have so many palettes and you really have to think about you know, where you want to rank them, they just had to get ranked lower than probably I wanted to rank them. But just know that I liked the majority of these palettes so much, and the quality I think is great, but in a ranking video they just have to be ranked, you know, lower or higher, so that's just how it goes. But this was really tough for me, but really fun as well. So I really do hope you guys enjoy this video. So with that being said, let's go ahead and get into it. We're gonna go ahead and start with the worst palette, the number 20 palette that I tried recently, and this is the Wired palette from Urban Decay. Now I did do a first impressions video on this palette, and I also in that video, in case you haven't seen it, did swatches and comparisons to the Electric palette and things like that. And in that video I definitely did not hide my disappointment in this palette. I was actually really excited for this palette. It looks like such a beautiful palette. The way they kind of revamped it as a like new age Electric palette, I thought it was really cool. The colors are so pretty. It's this like pastel slash neon rainbow, and I had such high hopes for this palette, but it really let me down. I just felt like the quality of the shadows was really chalky, really difficult to work with, and it just overall really disappointed me. So when I thought of the lowest ranking palette that I had tried over the last couple of months, this one was the first one that came to mind, just because of how much it disappointed me, the excitement I had for it, and it really let me down. And as well, because Urban Decay is an expensive brand, so when you're paying that kind of money for a product, you want it to be great. You don't want it to be just okay or subpar or anything like that. You don't want it to be bad. So this one had to be my fail. And just so you guys know, I will try to link any videos that I mention in the eye or in the description box. And in the description box, I'm gonna also go ahead and link all the palettes that I'm talking about, just in case you're interested in checking them out or purchasing them or whatever the case may be. I'm not going to list them in the ranking order, so no cheating. Oh, and by the way, if you guys like my makeup today, I feel like it's a little bit more, I don't want to say wild, but it just is like, I don't know. I did film this look. I'm not sure which video is going to go up first, the face makeup video or this ranking video. I feel like the ranking video will go up first because I think it'll be a little bit easier to edit, but just know, stay tuned, this is coming. Alright, moving on to number 19. This is a palette that I was a little bit easier for me as well. I wouldn't say the quality is horrible, but it was just a little bit more disappointing to me, especially when I consider all the other palettes that I tried and tested out. This was just one that I didn't love, and I did have kind of higher hopes for, and it is the Dido Galaxy Shade palette. So I had a little bit of high hopes for it just because it's such a cute palette. I love the theme and the design. It has a nice mirror. It's packaged really well. It looks really cute, but I just felt like this palette in general was just a bit hit and miss. Like some of the shadows performed really great. I felt like the mattes were really nice, but it has a lot of these like marbled flaky metallic shades that just didn't perform very well. I did do a video with this as well, so of course I will try to link that if you haven't seen it and you want to see it in action. And there were some metallic shades that looked really pretty, but I feel like, and I've kind of learned this as I've tried more of these type of shadows that are marbled, is that they look pretty in the palette and they're really intriguing and pleasing to the eye in the palette, but when you go to use them on the eyes, they're just not as pretty, because some of these colors, once blended together, just don't look as good. And I feel like that just has to go with improper color theory when putting these shadows together, because some of them just kind of blend together and look gray or muddy or just not very pretty. They're mostly just for the aesthetic look of a palette. And so anyways, for that, this one just got ranked really low because I just didn't love every single shade in here. It's pretty to look at, but it's not like my favorite thing to wear on the eyes, so it got ranked pretty low for that. Now, if you're someone who watches my channel, you know, all my videos and things like that, some of these won't be any surprise to you, especially these ones that are ranked a little bit lower, because any video that I've done a little bit more dedicated on these palettes, I've already kind of expressed my opinion. And when I did my video on this palette for number 18, I did mention that I was underwhelmed or wasn't as impressed, but I will say that as I tried more of these shadows from this brand, at least, I've tried a bigger variety of them, I became a little bit more impressed than I originally was. And I did make an update in my beauty replay video for the month that I had reviewed this palette and their shadows. So I was a little bit more impressed than I had originally been in my first impressions video, but still I felt like this one needed to be ranked a little bit lower because in comparison to just the other shadows and palettes that I tried over the last couple months, this one just can't really compete, and so it has to be ranked lower. But I don't think they're bad shadows, and they are a lot more affordable. But anyways, enough of my rambling. So number 18 is the Coastal Scents Think Pink palette. Now this is a palette that's like fully put together, like oh, I didn't have one removed that I put in another little palette, but anyways, this is fully put together as a palette. You can buy like this Think Pink palette, but all of these shadows in here are their hot pots and are available individually. So anyways, I have tried several of their hot pots. I ended up purchasing a bunch more myself to try out a variety of shades, since I wasn't, like, I'm not into pinks. I think a lot of you guys know that. So I think that was a big part that played into me being a little bit underwhelmed when I tried this palette, because I was like, ugh, I already don't like pinks. So there's already that kind of negative thing against it. But anyways, I do think they're nice shadows, especially for the price. They're very, very affordable. They perform really nicely. And so anyways, I don't think they're the worst thing. I think they're a really good deal, but compared to the other palettes I tried this month, this just wasn't up to par, so this one had to be ranked pretty low. All right, now that we're past those three palettes, this is where it got a little bit harder for me, and we're going into palettes that I really did enjoy and thought the quality was really nice, and I struggled quite a bit, especially as we go up into the like number 10 spot. So from 10 on down, it was kind of a struggle, like where do I place these? But anyways, I did end up putting this one at number 17, just because this one had, like the Galaxy shade palette, a lot of those marbled shades in it that I thought were okay, but I just wasn't impressed by. And so for the number 17 spot, I did put the Revolution Pro Legendary palette. And like I said, this made me sad because I felt like the quality of these shadows was really good. I really enjoyed playing around with this palette. I think it's a fun palette. But those marbled shades is really what kind of knocked it down a peg, because they're just not my favorite. And then additionally, if I recall from my beauty replay review, I had mentioned that a lot of the mattes in here, though they look different, they kind of are very similar once applied on the eyes. Like there's several of these kind of more purple, mauve, burgundy tones that look different in the palette, but once on the eye, they come across pretty similar. So I feel like the majority of the looks that I created with this palette, even though they were different and using different shades, all somewhat looked kind of the same to me. So I felt like even though it looks like there's variety, I didn't feel like I got a lot of variety from it, if that makes sense. So for those reasons combined, that knocked this palette down. Okay, so this next one kind of breaks my heart a little bit. I feel like I probably should have ranked it higher, especially compared to the next few palettes that I'm going to mention. I kind of feel like this should have ranked higher than the next ones, but I think just because it is so, I hate to say it, but boring, it had to be ranked lower. And so for number 16, I picked the, I want to cry saying it, the Juvia's Place The Nudes palette. Now, I'm sad because the quality I think is really, really great. I love Juvia's Place. I think this is a beautiful palette, and I love their minis that they recently released. And I think this is a smart palette. I don't think it's a silly palette by any means. I feel like it's a great kind of companion palette in a way for those who want more transition shades or blending shades or highlight shades. This would be a great palette to have for additional shades like that. It can be a standalone palette. I have used this to create a look on the eye using just this palette, and you can do it, but because so many of the shades are so light, it's not like you can get a big variety of looks or anything from it, which I know it's only 6 shadows, but I just mean like they're all just these basic nude, very light nude shades. So I just feel like for that reason it had to be ranked quite a bit lower, just because of the lack of versatility in it. And clearly, because you're seeing this, you're gonna know there's other of the mini palettes from Juvia's Place in there. And so even though there's only 6 shades and they're monochromatic, I still feel like there are certain ways or certain shades you could put in a palette like that where you can still get a variety of looks and it can be fun and exciting, even though it is so minimal. But this one is literally just so like, you know what I'm saying. I'm sure you guys know what I'm saying, but quality wise, I think it's beautiful. I love Juvia's Place. I think this is a beautiful palette. I'm glad I have it, but just versatility wise, it just had to be ranked low. So now these next 3 palettes are all from the same brand, and like I said, I feel like these ones maybe should have been under the Juvia's Place the Nudes palette, just because quality wise I do think the Juvia's Place palettes are better quality. But that being said, I do think these are really good quality palettes and I really enjoyed using them. But I did rank them lower just because, again, compared to the other palettes I tried and tested out the last couple of months, these ones just didn't, spark some excitement for me as much as the other ones. And so when I was ranking things, I was like, these just have to be lower because they're not as exciting. But I think they're good palettes, good, nice quality palettes, and they got ranked a little bit higher than the Juvia's Place one just because of the variety in them. So anyways, number 15 is the Dido Cosmetics Saturn shade palette, which looks like this. And I said this, I feel like a broken record because I said this I don't know how many times the month that I was reviewing these palettes about how disappointed I was in this palette, mainly for the only reason that this is the outside of the palette, and all of the other palettes, the outside correlated to what was on the inside, but the outside of this palette is these pretty greens and like grungy, mossy green tones. But then when you open the palette, this is what's inside, and it's like, that is such a disappointment. Like every time I looked at this palette, I was disappointed that there wasn't greens in there, grungy greens and things like that. So anyways, that's not necessarily the reason why I knocked this down lower than the other ones. Because I think this color scheme is actually really, really pretty. These are tones that kind of speak to me a little bit, more so the burgundy shade here, and this beautiful kind of coppery orange is really, really stunning. But the reason why this one kind of got ranked a little bit lower is because the matte shades in here are all very, very light, so you can't really get for those who want like a deepening shade or a transition shade, they're all really light. So I feel like versatility wise, this one isn't as versatile. I feel like you kind of would need to reach for other palettes to really complete it. Like, you don't have to, but I feel like it would be more helpful. So I feel like it's not as complete. I don't know, it just wasn't my favorite palette, even though I think the color scheme is really, really pretty, but it was just very light. I don't know, so this one kind of got ranked lower than the others. And then for the number 14 spot, I picked the Dido Cosmetics Eco Earth Shade Palette. So like I mentioned, the outside does correlate with the inside, so in here you are seeing some blues and greens. And so I do appreciate that this inside does match with the outside. This does have a nice, at least for my skin tone, range of lighter matte shades, as well as this one's a little bit deeper. You have some darker shades up here. This green is so, so pretty, and I feel like I was able to create some really pretty looks with this palette. So it got ranked a little bit higher than the Saturn shade palette. And then if you guys recall from my videos on this, it should probably be no surprise that my favorite one from this brand and this collection of palettes that I tried was the Shiny Sun shade palette, which again, it looks very similar actually to the Saturn one, but this one has a few more matte shades that are darker and can create a little bit more versatility. So you have these two darker shades with just a dark matte kind of burgundy shade is so, so pretty, a dark matte orangey shade, and then you have the lighter shades here for mattes that are really nice, and then some really pretty shimmery shades. This one did have a pressed glitter in it, which I thought performed really nicely. But anyways, I enjoyed this palette the most out of those Dido palettes. I just love the color scheme, and so this one got ranked a little bit higher. So this one I have at 13 for the ranking. Moving on up to the number 12 spot, I put the Revolution Pro Mirage palette. I really like this palette a lot. Again, I feel like the quality is really good, same as the Legendary palette, although this one I liked a little bit more because these are more so my colors. Yes, this is a little bit more of a boring palette, I'm sure, to a lot of people. There's a lot of neutrals, a lot of warm tones, but that's just my jam. That's just what I love. But again, this one got ranked lower in the list of 20 just because it is a little bit more of a boring palette. But if you think about it, like if we were doing this in the 10s, this would be in the, you know, number 2 spot. So I feel like I had to kind of think about it that way, like this would be number 2 if we were a ranking of 10, you know, of the last 10 of the 20, you know, so this got placed up higher. I really did like this palette. It was great for like kind of an everyday go-to type of looks, easy looks, but just a little bit more boring, I'm sure, for a lot of people. So anyways, that got ranked for number 12. Moving on to the number 11 spot, which I guess the way I was thinking about it would have been the number 1 spot for the last half of the 20, is the Juvia's Place Afrique palette. And so while I felt like happy ranking this at number 11, the number 1 spot of the back half of the 20, because it is such a beautiful palette, there's a lot of versatility to it with all the different colors, and the metallics in here are super, super beautiful. It's the same Juvia's Place quality that most of us know and love, but the reason why this got ranked lower on the list of the 20 in the spectrum of 20 is just because as beautiful as this palette is and as easy as it was for me to work with, I didn't reach for it as much as I thought I would. Now, of course, I had so many palettes to try the month that I got this, and then even the month after. I tried to keep it in my makeup basket for 2 months straight to make sure I got some use out of it, and every time I just didn't find myself wanting to reach for it that much. It just didn't spark as much like creativity. It didn't inspire me, I guess I should say. Like, I look at it and I thought it was pretty and I can see looks that I can create with, but I just wanted to create with other palettes more. So even though I think the quality is great, I think it's a beautiful palette, I love the variety of color in here, I just wasn't inspired to use it enough. So it, compared to the other palettes that I, you know, have, that it's going to be from, you know, 10 on up to number 1, this just didn't make the 10 list, you know, it just wasn't. And I don't know if you can tell, it almost looks like I barely used this, but I used it enough to be able to know the quality, but I just didn't reach for it enough for me to put it higher up in the ranking. But a beautiful, beautiful palette. And it's palettes like this that make me really want to stop purchasing new palettes and trying new things and really just appreciate what I have, because there's so many gorgeous products and palettes that I have that don't get enough love and attention because I'm constantly trying new things. I talk a little bit about this in my makeup I want but probably won't buy video, and talked about maybe I need to go on a no buy and just start appreciating what I have. But anyway, so enough of my rambling on this palette. This got ranked at number 11. Beautiful palette, but just not one I reached for enough. Moving on up into the top 10. So for the number 10 spot, I placed the Anastasia Beverly Hills Riviera palette. Now, I think this is a really beautiful palette. I didn't think it would be a palette that would really be my color story or color scheme, or one that I would want to reach for a lot. But anyways, I got this in my Beautylish Lucky Bag and played around with it quite a bit the month I was testing it out, and really enjoyed the looks that I created with it. Some standout shades to me were the matte shade Cabana and then this gold metallic shade Inheritance that I just thought looked so, so beautiful in my eyes, and I felt like really enhanced the green in my hazel eyes, and I just loved it, and I wore it quite a bit. I actually unfortunately did not reach for the brighter shades, the purple and the pink in here, so I still never had tested them out to really have an opinion or review on those shadows, but I pretty much used the rest of the shadows in this palette and really enjoyed it and liked the quality. But when I thought about this compared to some of the other shadows, it just wasn't as exciting to me as these other ones. So it may seem weird to you because I'm looking at my list and I'm like, I'm kind of even surprised at myself, but I don't know, there was just something about these other palettes that I ended up liking more, and so this one had to get ranked a little bit lower. But I really did enjoy using this palette, and I thought it was really lovely. I thought the looks I created were really pretty, so great palette. But of course, in a ranking of 20, I'm probably going to say this over and over again, things just have to get placed somewhere, and so this is where this one just happened to get placed. Moving on into the number 9 spot, this one also makes me a little bit sad because this is a brand that I absolutely love and adore. I feel like it's a hidden gem. I feel like it's my mission sometimes to get people to discover this brand and try them and fall in love with them the way I have. But anyway, so it does make me sad to put this in the number 9 spot, but the only reason I did was just because this is an all shimmer palette. It's not a standalone palette. I actually did create a look with it with just this palette, no mattes at all. And I know a lot of people don't necessarily feel like they need mattes in a palette. But if you are someone who does feel like you want mattes in a palette or need mattes in a palette, it would definitely be more of a companion palette for you. But anyways, I think it's a beautiful palette. I love the colors, I love the quality, but enough of the suspense. The palette that I'm talking about is the NBA Cosmetics Hippy Chic palette. Now this version that I have is actually the limited edition version. It is still available for purchase, and I'm going to show you what it looks like if you were to purchase it now. But this style where it's all like kind of decorative and you have the names up here and the shadows and the square pans and then the name on the back, and it comes with this was the limited edition version. If you were to buy this collection today, it would look like this. So it would come in one of their standard NBA Cosmetics palettes. Nothing on the back. It says NBA Cosmetics on the front. It does have a little sleeve here, but it's just a clear one. And then it has this little holographic saying on here, but not the names. And then it is in this the round pans, and the names are on the back of the shadows, so you know what they are. But anyway, so this is how it would come. Still really, really pretty. But anyway, so I do have the limited edition version as well as the updated version. Now the NBA Cosmetics Silk Effects formula is, I would say, kind of a little bit more of a satiny type of formula. It's not necessarily metallic. They have a little bit of shimmer to it, but it's like a little satiny, silky kind of formula. They're very easy to work with. These are shadows that don't need to be used with a setting spray or anything like that to perform. They're just really beautiful, and I really love their formula and these shadows, and I think this is a beautiful collection. But anyways, I just wanted to rank it a little bit lower because it isn't a standalone palette, but it is a fun pop of color palette. So if you were someone who had enough mattes and wanted more pops of colors for your collection, this might be a palette you would really like, but not a standalone palette for most people's standards, I should say. So anyways, enough of my rambling. Let's go ahead and move on to number 8. So for the number 8 spot, I picked the Juvia's Place The Chocolates palette. I just really like this palette, even though it is browns and it's very simple and there's not a big variety, just like with the nudes. I just loved the looks that I created with this palette, because you do have this very, very kind of light caramely like shade, and then a slightly warm but deeper brown, and then you have two other browns here that are quite darker for some depth. And I just liked the variety of the browns that are in here. I just thought they were so pretty, and I loved the way they looked on my eyes. And I just love the quality of these little mini palettes. And then there are two metallic shades in here, which I didn't use. I mean, I used them, but they weren't the main focus of the looks that I created when I used this palette. The mattes really is what I just was in love with in these palettes. And so I just wanted to rank this a little bit higher, just because it was a little bit surprising to me how much I really just love this palette. When I went back and forth as I was ranking these, I was like, maybe this should be a little bit lower because it is a little bit more of a boring palette. But every time I thought about it, I was like, I just loved this palette. I really enjoyed using it, even though it's boring and neutral and just browns, but it's like such pretty browns. So like, I don't know, I just had to rank it higher because, I mean, you could clearly see it in me. It brings excitement to me. Like, it makes me happy, and I just loved using it even though it's just boring brown. So it had to be ranked a little bit higher, I think, for those reasons. Coming in at the number 7 spot is another Juvia's Place mini palette, and this is the Violets. This palette I ranked a little bit higher than the Chocolates because it really surprised me. Now, if you watched the tutorial I did with this palette, it was my first time using this palette, and I was so surprised about the quality of the purples in here. Now, Juvia's Place has really beautiful quality shadows. They're really easy to work with, very, very pigmented, but even in the Juvia's Place palettes, they do have some purples that aren't the easiest to work with. I feel like, and I say this a lot, and I'm sure a lot of people say it and you've heard it a lot, but purples are notoriously difficult. Shadows is a notoriously difficult color for shadows and to formulate, to get really right. And I noticed that across the board from a lot of different brands that purples are just not always the greatest. It's always the one shadow that's a little bit of a weak link in a palette. And so I was really surprised when this one, especially this darker purple, just applied and showed up true to color in the pan. There wasn't any skipping, any chalkiness, anything. It was just so beautiful and just performed so well. And then this light purple, for being kind of like a light pastel shade, I thought was really, really beautiful. It starts off light, but it can be built up. And so I was just overall really impressed with the shades, the mattes especially. But of course, the purple metallics in here are absolutely stunning. And so because of how surprisingly impressed I was with this palette. I had to rank it higher up on this list because it's just such a beautiful palette. Yes, simple, only 6 shades. You're only going to get a handful of looks, but the quality of this just is so amazing. So this got ranked higher for me. For the number 6 spot, I decided to place the Lottie London The Jewels palette. This is a really great little palette. It's only around $7. It kind of reminds me of the Huda Beauty little mini jewel palettes. And I bought it on a whim. If you guys watch my beauty replay video, you guys already know the spiel. I talked about this. But just to see if it was good, I wanted to try more products from Lottie London. This one caught my eye. And I wasn't sure what the quality would be, but I thought $7 isn't a big loss if this happens to be a dud. But this ended up being quite a win in my opinion, especially for the price. But the quality is really, really good. The mattes are very creamy, very pigmented, very easy to work with, no issues with it. The shimmers are stunning as well. They apply really well on their own without the aid of a setting spray, and you can apply them with a brush and they work just beautifully. So I was really, really impressed with this palette. I would definitely recommend these palettes. I think they're adorable. They're just mini little guys and they're very affordable but great quality. But the reason why I ranked it a little bit lower than the rest of the shadows that I'm going to mention is just because as impressed with it as I am, it's just not as exciting of a palette compared to the other ones I'm going to be mentioning that are a little bit higher up. And as much as I loved working with these shadows and felt they were really easy to work with and was really impressed by it, again, this was another palette that I didn't find myself wanting to reach for a ton. So I did use it a handful of times to be able to test all the shadows, but I was more excited to use these other palettes that I was testing out at the same time. And of course, this is a little bit more of a smaller color scheme, so it's not like you're getting a variety of looks, but still I felt like I needed to be higher up in this ranking of 20, but had to be a little bit lower than the other ones I'm going to be mentioning because it just wasn't as exciting, but I was still very, very impressed with this palette. Moving higher up to the number 5 spot. Now this one easily could have been higher on the list as well. It's a great palette. I love the colors in here. I really enjoyed using this palette. The month that I tested this palette out, I pretty much used it so much, the majority of the month. I think this is the palette I used more so over the Juvia's Place Afrique palette because I was testing them out at the same time, and I just like almost couldn't be bothered with the Afrique palette. I really just want to play with this one. It got me excited. I love the colors, but when I thought about the other palettes that I'm going to mention higher up, I just have a love for these other brands, so kind of brand loyalty does play a little bit into play with ranking for the next few palettes. But anyways, this is a great palette. I loved using this. I still need to create some content on my channel using this palette, but this is the Jeffree Star Conspiracy palette. So I was gifted this palette and I really just enjoyed playing with this. I think it's a beautiful, beautiful palette, and I love the colors. I had no issues with it. It's my first time ever trying Jeffree Star eyeshadows, his formula, and I thought it was great, really easy to work with. I love playing with it, but I did have to put it in the number 5 spot because my love for these other palettes and brands really just put them higher up in this ranking. So with that, let's go ahead and move on into the number 4 spot. The number 4 spot goes again to NBA Cosmetics, and this is their Garden Party palette. Again, this is the limited edition version of this palette. So this palette has the pretty floral design on it. You have this floral sleeve. And just like the Hippy Chic palette, it's got the shadows and names here and then everything on the back, and they do have the square pants. Now this one I had to rank higher up because, like I said, I love NBA Cosmetics. They have my heart. I've worked with them for years. I love the owner. I've met the owner several times, been to Ohio where her shop is and things like that. Anyways, while this is a little bit more of a not super exciting color scheme, I do think it's a beautiful color scheme. I love it. But what made this so much more exciting to me was that this is NBA Cosmetics' new matte formula that she has been working on for so long. And it was just so exciting to me that she had finally launched them and put them together. And this was, I think, the first bundle she had put out with the mattes in it. And so it was so exciting to me to finally be able to try the new formula. And I just fell in love with that. It's always exciting to me when smaller business brands are developing new products and launching new products. It's interesting to me how different formulas can be for eyeshadows and how there can be a lot of really great formulas of mattes and just eyeshadows in general, and you can like a variety of them, and yet they're still all very, very different. This matte formula is different than a lot that I've tried. It's a little bit more of a drier formula, so there's a lot less kick up in the pan, but they're still really easy to use. You get beautiful pigmentation, they blend beautifully. So even though they're a little bit more of a drier matte formula, they don't perform chalky or skippy or anything like that on the eyes. They go on beautifully, blend beautifully. They're just really easy to use. And so I was just overall really, really excited about NBA Cosmetics' new matte formula, and then these cute little bundles that they have been doing. So anyways, I would have loved to rank this a little bit higher because I love the quality of the Silk Effect shadows as well as their new matte shadows, but the next three palettes just really hit it out of the park for me in terms of quality and kind of variety, although you may laugh at the top two ones, but just anyways, I just found myself just reaching for them so much more, and just really when I thought about it, I was like, I just love these shadows and these colors, and so they had to be ranked a little bit higher. But anyways, oh, really quickly, let me show you. I do have the new version of the Garden Party palette, so if you were to purchase it now, this is what it looks like. So I do have the limited edition version as well as the updated version in case you were curious. So let's go ahead and move on to the number 3 spot, and I feel like a broken record again. Even saying I feel like a broken record is sounding like a broken record, but this one makes me sad to even rank this as the number 3 spot because this easily could have been number 1. It's a beautiful palette. The quality is incredible. If you saw the video I did on this palette, you will not be surprised that I love it so much because I literally only had rave things to say about it. But I just had to rank the other two higher, so that it is what it is. But anyways, number 3 spot goes to Autumn's Reign by Sydney Grace. This is a beautiful palette. I love how big it is. I love the design of it. I love the variety of colors in this palette. I love that you have a few neutrals, you have a few warm tones, and you even have a few cool tones in here. There's greens and blues and golds and pink and purples. Like, it's just this beautiful metallic shade here. Just stunning, stunning palette. So impressed. I want to purchase so much more from Sydney Grace. This is a beautiful palette, and Sydney Grace is a wonderful brand that is new to me a little bit, but I fell in love instantly, and so could have ranked this quite a bit higher, but the next two palettes I just, for reasons I will share in a minute, decided to rank as in the number 1 and 2 spots. So anyways, with that being said, let's go ahead and move on to the number 2 spot, and I feel like some of you guys might be like, what? You're crazy. How is this your number 2 palette? But when I really was thinking about it, like I said, I wrote these down, I really went back and forth, and it was like I could easily place so many of these other palettes higher up. But this palette, the colors, like this color is like literally my favorite color, and this palette is like, it's just me. I just love it so much. It's a very small palette, it's a simple palette, but when I wore this palette, I was in love and so impressed. So anyways, without further ado, this is the Berries palette by Juvia's Place. Simple, I know, and that's why I feel like you guys are probably gonna laugh at me considering I rank some of the other ones a little bit lower for being a little bit more not as versatile. But I feel like when I thought about it with this palette, I was like, I don't care. I don't care. Like, this is all I need to wear on my eyes. I don't care. I don't need anything else. Because these colors are just so, so pretty. And it's funny because I've said a lot of times, I feel like especially lately, that I'm not super big into pink shadows, and there are pinks in here, but I feel like this is just so different because you have these colors that are more like burgundy, wine, deep, rich shades that kind of turn these pink shades like just differently. They hit differently, if I can use that phrase. They just hit differently. But so anyways, there's 4 matte shades in here that are just beautiful quality. I just love, I couldn't get enough of these shadows when I was testing out these palettes. But also additionally, the metallic shades in here are just speak to my soul, stunning. So this red one down here is just one of the most beautiful burgundy red metallic shades. And then this one up here is a little bit more pinky, but it's duochrome, so it's pink with a little bit of a red shift to it that just makes it so unique to my collection and just so stunning that I was like, I can't not make this one of my very top palettes that out of the rest of these. It just clearly I have like so many good things to say about it for being such a simple palette, for being only a 6-pan eyeshadow palette, like that it gets me this excited and feels so happy about it. I'm like, okay, this had to be my number 2 palette. Favorite shades, like I love these burgundy tones and this red. I love. So anyways, my number 2 palette, maybe surprising, maybe not, I don't know. What do you guys think? So I wonder if you guys can guess my number 1 palette. And I feel like maybe this is cheating because I don't know if technically this would be considered a palette. It's more so a bundle. But then again, when I was thinking about it, the NBA Cosmetics palettes are technically more so bundles. They're collections of single shadows put together in a palette bundle. But anyways, I consider them palettes because they're together as a collection in a palette anyway. So may or may not be cheating, but still, again, this is another color that is my favorite. The burgundy shades, that's my favorite color. It's like my tattoo, most of my clothes are burgundy, but the other favorite color I have, and some of you guys probably already know it, is green. Green has been my favorite color since I was a kid. I just love it. I think it's just so pretty and such a versatile color, and lately I have not been able to get enough of this color, and so that's why this palette ended up being my number 1, because I just love it so much. And even for a monochromatic little bundle, I felt like I could get such a wide variety of looks from it. Like no look I created was the same, because there's such a good mix of tones within this bundle. So anyways, this, you may have already guessed it, is the Sydney Grace Danny's Dream Bundle eyeshadow palette. Well, I made it a palette by putting it in this empty magnetic palette, but look how beautiful it is. I loved using this so much, and like I said, even though it's only greens, I never felt bored reaching for this palette. I was still always excited reaching for this palette or these shadows. Like, it just was so, like, made me so happy. And the metallic shades in here, just like with the Berries palette, like, I feel like these are just unique metallic shade, just beautiful, stunning, just make me happy kind of metallic shades. And then the mattes are just so beautiful. So you have a mix of light colors, minty colors, warm tone, neutral colors, like just for a variety of looks that I just loved playing with. And so I don't know, I just felt like this green palette, I had to be at my number 1. It makes me so happy. You could see the smile on my face. This little palette makes me happy. This bundle makes me happy. These colors here make me so happy. If you want to think of colors that make me, Maria, happy, these are it. And so those got ranked my number 1 and 2 palettes of all the palettes I tried the last couple of months. So I don't know if that was surprising to any of you guys. I'm sure if you watch my beauty replay videos, maybe none of this is surprising to you, but maybe it is. I would love to know your thoughts and opinions on how I ranked these shadows. I would love to know, where you might have ranked these shadows. Do you agree, disagree with me? I'd love to hear your opinions. But this is very hard. Ranking palettes, ranking products is really tough. And so, like I said at the beginning, a lot of these palettes could have easily been ranked higher than they were, but I don't know, when compared to other things, preferences and opinions kind of really play into it. So quality may have been great with some of these, but just preference is what ranked them. So anyways, that is it for this ranking video. I really hope you guys enjoyed it, found it entertaining. But anyways, with that being said, that wraps it up for this video. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time, much love and hugs to you. Bye, beauty babes. Mwah.